The Volturian Empire had stood for 10,000 years, its crystalline spires reaching toward twin moons that never set. Within the highest tower of the imperial palace, Princess Lynera moved through corridors of living starlight, her deep violet skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that marked her as untouchable, literally. Her people's biology made physical contact lethal to most species. A single brush of her skin could stop a heart, freeze neural pathways, or worse. She had never been touched. Not once in her 300 years. The humans had arrived 6 months ago, their diplomatic vessel limping into Volturian space with failing engines and desperate hope. Ambassador James Chen had been assigned as liaison to the imperial court, his easy smile and warm brown eyes a stark contrast to the cold perfection of her world. Lynera had watched him from prescribed distances, fascinated by his species' strange customs, their handshakes, their embraces, their casual comfort with physical connection. "Your Highness," James called from across the palace's hanging gardens, careful to maintain the mandatory 15-foot distance. "I brought those earth flowers you asked about, roses, they're in stasis, but I thought you might like to see them." Lynera approached the safety barrier, her silver hair floating around her shoulders like liquid metal. "Your species gives these as tokens of affection." "Among other things," James said, his smile softening. "Love, apology, celebration. Humans use them to say what words can't quite capture." "How strange," Lynera murmured, studying the delicate red petals behind the containment field. "To speak through something you can touch. We have nothing like that. Our poetry, our art, it's all at a distance." James was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was low. "Is it lonely, never being touched?" The question hit her like a solar flare. No one in the Empire would dare ask such a thing. It would be like asking if breathing was tiresome or if existing was inconvenient. But humans, she'd learned, asked uncomfortable questions. "I don't know what I'm missing," she said carefully. "How can you mourn what you've never known?" "I think," James said, moving as close to the barrier as protocol allowed, "that some part of us always knows, some part recognizes the absence." That night, alone in her chambers, Lynera stood before the window and watched James cross the courtyard far below. She pressed her hand against the glass, imagining warmth that wasn't her own deadly heat, imagining what it would feel like if someone could touch her without dying. The palace's AI announced an incoming message, a threat from the Kelvorian Federation. Diplomatic relations were deteriorating. War loomed on the horizon, and James Chen, she realized with growing dread, would be recalled to Earth within the week. She descended into the palace's forbidden archives that very night, where ancient texts carved into crystal held secrets the Empire had long forgotten. She'd never broken protocol before, never questioned the absoluteness of her untouchability. But James had awakened something in her, a desperate curiosity, a hunger for impossible things. "There must be something," she whispered, her fingers hovering over crystalline tablets that predated the modern empire. "Some case, some exception." The royal librarian, an elderly Volturian named Cassith, materialized from the shadows. "Your Highness, these archives are restricted even to you." "Then arrest me," Lynera said without turning. "But first tell me, has anyone of our kind ever been touched without killing?" Cassith was silent for so long that Lynera finally looked up. The old librarian's bioluminescent patterns flickered in a way that suggested deep distress. "There is one text," Cassith admitted. From the old empire before we became isolationists. But Your Highness, it's theoretical at best, dangerous at worst. Show me. The tablet told the story of Princess Vayara, who had fallen in love with a trader from a distant world. The text described a bonding ritual, a gradual exposure that could, theoretically, allow one person to build immunity to a Volturian's lethal touch. But it required time, proximity, and an intimacy that defied every safety protocol. It had killed 3 subjects before one survived. This is madness, Casseth said. Even if you attempted this, even if it worked, the scandal would destroy you. The Council would never permit. The Council is about to send the humans away, possibly forever. Lynera's voice cracked with emotion she'd never allowed herself to feel. And I cannot let him leave without knowing if this is possible. James arrived at her private chambers the next evening, confusion evident in his expression. Your Highness. Your message said it was urgent. She stood behind a containment field, her heart racing. I need to ask you something, and I need your complete honesty. No diplomacy, no protocol. All right, James said slowly. If there were a way for you to touch me, to truly touch me, but it was dangerous, potentially deadly, and would require us to be close in ways that violate every rule of both our societies. Would you want to try? James stared at her, his brown eyes wide with understanding. Lynera, not as a diplomat, she pressed on. Not as an ambassador, as James, as the man who brought me roses and asked if I was lonely. Would you risk everything for something that might not even be possible? The silence stretched between them like a vast canyon. Then James smiled, not his diplomatic smile, but something raw and real and terrified. I've been in love with you for 4 months. I would risk everything just to hold your hand once before I die. Lynera's patterns flared brilliant violet in the darkness. Then we begin tomorrow. The ritual required proximity, controlled, gradual, measured proximity. Each session brought James 1 foot closer to Lynera's unshielded form, his body slowly acclimating to the electromagnetic field that surrounded her like a lethal aura. The first week, he sat 10 feet away while she lowered the containment barrier. His nose bled within minutes. The second week, at 8 feet, his hands trembled uncontrollably. At 6 feet, he passed out twice. This is killing you, Lynera said during the 12th session, watching medical monitors flash urgent warnings. We should stop. No, James wiped blood from his upper lip, his determination absolute. My body's adapting. The med scanner shows my neural pathways are reforming, creating new tolerance patterns. It's working, Lynera. But the palace was not quiet about their secret sessions. Whispers spread through the court like radiation. The Imperial Council summoned her on the 15th day. You risk not only this human's life, High Chancellor Vorath intoned, his ancient face severe, but the Empire's reputation. If you accidentally kill their ambassador, then I'll face the consequences, Lynera interrupted, her voice cold as a distant star. But you won't stop me. Vorath's patterns flickered with barely controlled rage. You've become contaminated by human sentimentality, attachment, love. He spat the word like poison. These are weaknesses that will destroy you. Then let them destroy me, Lynera said, standing tall before the council's judgment. I'd rather burn with feeling than freeze in perfection. The war with the Kelvorian Federation escalated. James was recalled to Earth not in a week but in 3 days. The human diplomatic mission was evacuating. We're out of time, James said that night, standing 4 feet away from her now. so close she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, smell the strange, sweet scent of his species. Lynera, even if we can't finish the ritual, one more session, she insisted, her voice fierce. Tomorrow, we bring you to 2 feet. If you survive that, we'll know if touch is possible. And if I don't survive, Lynera's voice broke, then I'll have killed the only person I've ever loved. The final session began at dawn. The entire palace seemed to hold its breath as James sat 2 feet from her, sweat pouring down his face, every muscle trembling. The electromagnetic interference caused his heart to skip beats. Blood vessels burst in his eyes, but he didn't move away. One more foot, he gasped through the pain. Let me try one more foot. James, no, but he was already moving, sliding closer, his hand extended. 1 foot away now. Lynera's lethal field wrapped around him like invisible fire. His whole body convulsed, muscles locking, breath coming in ragged gasps. Please, he whispered, his hand shaking violently as he reached toward her. Please let me touch you before I leave forever. Lynera looked at his outstretched hand, so close to her own, a gesture so simple for his species, so impossible for hers. Every instinct screamed at her to pull back, to protect him, to maintain the distance that had kept her people safe for millennia. The palace fell utterly quiet around them. And then, with every alarm screaming and her own heart breaking, she reached toward him. Their fingertips met. For one impossible second, nothing happened. Then James's entire body arced with violet lightning, Lynera's bioelectric field surging through his nervous system like a tidal wave. He screamed, not in pain, but in overwhelming sensation, as if every nerve ending in his body had suddenly awakened for the first time. His hand remained pressed against hers, trembling but not pulling away. James, Lynera tried to jerk back, but his fingers tightened around hers. Don't, he gasped, his voice raw with wonder and agony. Don't let go, it's God, it burns, but it's not killing me. I can feel it adapting. I can feel... The electromagnetic surge began to stabilize. The lethal patterns that had killed so many others were finding pathways through his nervous system, neural channels that his weeks of exposure had prepared. His body temperature spiked, then normalized. The violent trembling subsided into subtle shivers. They were holding hands. A Volturian princess and a human ambassador, hands clasped while alarms shrieked and the impossible became real. You're touching me, Lynera whispered, wonder and terror mixing in her voice. Tears she didn't know she could cry traced luminescent paths down her violet cheeks. You're actually touching me and you're not dying. James laughed, a breathless, disbelieving sound that transformed into a sob. I'm not dying. I'm really not dying. Then his expression shifted into something fierce and desperate. But I'm leaving in 18 hours. Lynera, can I? He didn't finish the question. Instead, with the courage that had made humans a species worth knowing, he pulled her closer. Their second touch was an embrace. Lynera felt his arms wrap around her, felt the solid warmth of his body against hers, felt the rapid beating of his very human heart. 300 years of isolation shattered in a moment. She pressed her face against his shoulder and felt, for the first time in her existence, what it meant to be held. You're warm, she said, her voice muffled against him, drinking in every sensation. I always imagined humans would be cold compared to us, but you're so warm. You're like lightning, James murmured into her silver hair, his arms tightening around her as if he could hold this moment forever. Electric and alive and absolutely terrifying. I love it. I love you. The palace doors burst open. Guards poured in, weapons raised, the Imperial Council behind them with patterns flashing in outrage and shock. High Chancellor Vorath's voice boomed through the chamber. "Seize the human, he's attacked the princess. Stop!" Lynera's command carried the absolute authority of Imperial blood. She turned to face the council, still wrapped in James's arms, their hands intertwined, her patterns blazing defiance. "No one has attacked anyone. We have accomplished what you believed impossible. A human has survived my touch." The council stared in stunned silence, their certainties crumbling before their eyes. "And if he can survive," Lynera continued, her voice strengthening with each word, "then everything we believed about our isolation, our untouchability, our necessary distance from other species, all of it may be wrong. We may not need to be alone." Vorath's patterns flickered with barely controlled fury. "You've violated every protocol. You've risked interstellar incident. You've brought shame to—" "I've fallen in love," Lynera interrupted, her voice ringing through the chamber with absolute conviction. "And I will not let him leave." She felt James's arms tighten around her, felt his heart skip a beat against her back, felt his breath warm against her neck, sensations she'd thought forever beyond her reach. The entire empire held its breath. Vorath's ancient face worked through a dozen emotions before settling on something that might have been resignation. "The council will deliberate," he said finally. "Both of you will remain under guard until we reach a decision." 9 hours they waited in her chambers, hands clasped, refusing to be separated now that separation was no longer necessary. They talked of everything and nothing: Earth's oceans and Voltoria's crystalline forests, human poetry and Voltorian song patterns, the small moments that had made them fall in love across an impossible divide. When the doors opened again, Vorath entered alone, his patterns subdued. "The council has reached a decision," he announced. "Ambassador Chen will be permitted to remain in Voltorian space under specific conditions." Lynera's breath caught. "You will marry," Vorath continued, his voice heavy with the weight of 10,000 years of tradition bending. "Formally, by both human and Voltorian rights, this cannot be a scandal or a secret. If the Empire is to change its understanding of what is possible, it must be done through proper channels." "You're giving us permission?" James asked, disbelief and hope warring in his voice. Vorath's patterns shifted into something that might have been grudging respect. "You survived what should have killed you. You proved that our absolutes may not be as absolute as we believed. The council is divided, but the majority agrees that this could open possibilities we never imagined. Diplomatic alliances, cultural exchange, touch." He said the last word with visible discomfort. "There's more," Vorath added, his gaze settling on Lynera. "Princess, you will oversee a new initiative, Project Proximity, research into enabling Voltorians to interact physically with other species. If this is possible with humans, it may be possible with others. You've shattered a 10,000-year isolation. Now you must help us navigate what comes next." Lynera looked at James, her silver hair floating around them both like a protective curtain. "It means I stay here, in the Empire, but you would stay too. Can you accept that?" James pulled her closer, his arms still learning the miracle of holding her, still marveling at each point of contact. "I was supposed to go back to Earth, file reports, live a normal diplomatic career. Instead, I'm going to marry an alien princess who can literally kill with her touch, help revolutionize an empire's understanding of physical connection, and probably get written into human history books as either a hero or a cautionary tale. He kissed her forehead, another impossible touch that sent gentle sparks across her skin that made her patterns flare with joy she'd never imagined feeling. "Yes," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. "I can accept that." Through the palace windows, twin moons rose over crystalline spires. The Volturian Empire stood as it had for 10,000 years, but now, for the first time, it would learn what it meant to reach out, to touch, to love without distance. The palace had fallen quiet, and in that silence a human had kissed the untouchable princess. Everything had changed.